A dirty tenant caused the roach infestation within her unit and then blamed the landlord, called the city, and then got that landlord cited for the mess. Now, the landlord is evicting her. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting story for you today, and it's coming from the tenant's perspective of their horrible, dirty unit that has a roach infestation. Well, I'm actually laughing at this article because I've had tenants with roach infestations, and guess what? The unit did not have a roach infestation until after that tenant moved in, and I'm pretty sure that is exactly what happened in this story right here. But in this story, the tenant blames the landlord, called the city, and the city came out and then cited the landlord for the problem, okay? So tenant is dirty, nasty, doesn't clean anything, leaves old food laying out, causes this huge roach problem, you know, and then, oh, well, the landlord didn't fix it, so it's the landlord's fault. And, you know, like, yeah, that's great. That's great. But you know what? There's more to this story. There's a lot more to this story. And I'm willing to bet that the tenant filed this complaint with the city because, you know what? They weren't paying rent. They weren't paying rent and was trying to look for a way to stay up in that unit. Well, the landlord, you know, within their rights, within the laws of their municipality where they were working, filed eviction against that tenant for not paying rent. And you know what? Should have already had that eviction filed because this is a garbage tenant. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So have you ever had a tenant cause a roach problem within one of your units? Okay. Now, if you're a landlord like me and you deal with a lot of lower income tenants, I bet you that this has happened to you before. Okay, this is pretty universal. And yeah, I've called the exterminators out, etc. But if the people aren't clean, it doesn't matter. You can call that exterminator out every other day and the problem won't go away until you get them people out, clean the place up, and get all their garbage and everything out there. And you know what? The roaches, they lay their eggs inside the walls. Okay, so you gotta really fumigate that place, okay? And I've done it. I have done it multiple times. So I know a little bit about this. I'm pretty sure most of the landlords on here with any amount of experience, they have dealt with this as well, okay? But the article kind of portrays it like this is some poor innocent victim. Nope, I guarantee that is not the case. And I'll tell you why as we go through it. So let's get into it. This article is coming from newschannel5.com and it says, family says landlord won't take care of gross cockroach infestation. Now they could be evicted. You know, part of the reason I don't believe them is because if you moved into the place and there was this many cockroaches running around, you know, wouldn't you have said something immediately? Like, if you just saw a few when you moved in, you probably would have said something. You know, like, I remember I lived in a place that had roaches. It was an older home, and it was one of the first places I lived in after I moved out of my parents' house, right? And you know what? I was laying down, I was going to the store, laying down those, you know, those little bait traps, and I was, you know, fogging the place, doing everything I could, and trying to keep it as clean as possible. And you know what? That was just me spending a few dollars trying to keep the place, you know, with as little roach problem as possible. So yeah, I have personally experienced this. And the comparison of where I was living as compared to some of these pictures in this article, it is night and day, which tells me that the tenant themselves was bringing this problem in. So let's get into it. Nashville, Tennessee. Everyone deserves to live in a safe and healthy home, especially children. When we got an email about a family forced to throw out furniture and toys because of cockroaches, we wanted to help them. Hayla Shea and her 3 small children live in the home in Hermitage. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and from the outside it looks pretty like a pretty good home, but it's not, Hayla Shea said while fighting back tears. There's a roach infestation, and it's to the point where they're on the walls. They get in the bed with us. According to Shea, she's told the landlord, George Zervis, multiple times about the infestation on their side of the duplex, but pest control has never come. You know, and it doesn't matter what the tenant says, right? I'd be willing to bet the pest control did come. But like I said, I've dealt with this issue before in a duplex that I owned, and you cannot get rid of the problem until, I mean, you can't get rid of the cockroaches until you get rid of the tenants. Okay, so these people, they've got to go. And yeah, the roaches were getting into the other side, so I was still spraying and taking care of the other side, and I eventually had to evict the tenants in order to get them up out of the other unit, and then the problem was taken care of like that. You know, it was like, oh yeah, you know, we came in there, we blasted the place, you know, got rid of all the trash and the nastiness, and hey, the problem suddenly is gone. With those tenants, when they left, the problem disappeared with them. I wonder why, huh? Funny stuff, but that's always the way this sort of thing works. At the end of August, Shay and her mother, Rachel Rogers, called Metro Codes to report the rampant roach problem. A codes officer visited the property and cited the landlord for violating Metro's property standards code. In Nashville, property owners are required to do everything in their power to prevent an insect or rodent infestation. Yeah, so calling the code inspector, you know, and I'm not saying, I want to be clear here. I don't believe that this is the sort of issue that should be left alone. Okay, I do believe that a landlord should do their best to take care of the problem, but there's only so much we can do while the people are still living in there. Okay, these people aren't keeping their place clean. They aren't, you know, keeping food off of the cabinets and etc. Right, and once they are gone will be the time that we can really have the unit blasted by the pest exterminators. Okay, so you know, this issue, and you know, it is caused by nastiness. Okay, it is caused by the nastiness of the people living in there. Just like, you know, if there were fleas, you know, like, and then there is, in my opinion, there should be, you know, some effort put in by the tenant themselves. So, you know, like I said, you can't expect the landlord to, you know, like, I want you to imagine like a hoarder house, okay? Like, you've got trash piled up everywhere. You got old food rotting in the corner. You've got toilets that haven't been flushed in a long time, right? And then you want me to send an exterminator in there to spray, but you've got layers of trash and garbage everywhere. Where do you think the spray is going to go? It's going to go on top, but it's not going to be able to get into under the pile of trash. So what am I supposed to do? Okay, as the landlord, I can just keep sending them in and keep, you know, and I played this game. I played this game where I sent the exterminators in. The problem didn't disappear. So yeah, you got to get those people out. They're nasty, they're dirty and disgusting. They got to go, and they can call code enforcement all they want, you know. And I don't know, like they say in there, oh well, the landlord wasn't taking care of it. The landlord wasn't taking care of it. Well, that's what the tenant is saying. The landlord might have sent a person over to spray the place 3 times a month, and the tenant, you know, is still lying because they don't want to look bad. They don't want to look nasty. They don't want to look disgusting. They're embarrassed by it, of course. You know, so yeah, I don't blame one bit this landlord in this situation, because I don't know the truth. Instead, we're hearing one side of the story coming from a tenant who, in a moment, you're going to find out is getting evicted. Rogers pays for her family to live in this home. They moved into the home in December of 2022. I bust my butt for those babies, said Rogers. Bust your butt, whatever. Those babies, anybody who knows me would tell you I would die for them. A few days after Metro Codes got involved, Rogers got served. She could not pay last month's rent on time and is now being taken to eviction court by the landlord. Yeah, he's owed money, but like the codes man said, fix this. This is unhealthy and bad for her to live in this situation. I'm not saying he doesn't need his money. That's how he makes his money. But at the same time, how are you going to do this type of business? Keep up a reputable name, Rogers said. So just miraculously, you know, right at the exact moment when you're not paying rent, oh, there's a problem. There's a problem. You know, now I don't know the laws of Tennessee. You know, this is happening in the Nashville area, right? So I don't know the laws there, but it doesn't sound like it is considered retaliation when the landlord hasn't been paid the rent and you have filed a complaint. So, you know, and it shouldn't be. You know, like I have heard places where they say, oh, well, if somebody files a complaint, then the landlord can never file an eviction after that. And I'm like, well, that's idiotic. That's a dumb law, because that would incentivize the tenants to be filing false complaints and, you know, trying to penalize the landlord just so that they don't have to pay rent. So hopefully that isn't the law in Tennessee, but you know, this whole thing, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You know, like to me, it seems like they set this up because they didn't pay rent. The landlord probably was demanding rent. Then they filed the complaint, even though they caused the problem. So what does this really tell me? Okay, so this tells me a couple of things. One, this is probably a very low income area where these tenants who are pretty messy, they're not getting regular inspections from the landlord to make sure that the property is being kept in the correct condition. Okay, now when the landlord got fined, I would have been pretty pissed too. And you know, my generosity ends at the point where you're calling the city on me. So the landlord might have said to themselves, oh, you know what, you're only a few days late, I'm not going to file eviction, you know, that's okay. But the second you start, you know, calling the city and playing these games, my generosity ends at that point. And you know what, I want my rent money right now, otherwise you got to go. And as dirty as this place is, they needed to file the eviction anyway just so they could get the place fumigated. So what do you think? You know, would you have filed eviction against this tenant after this complaint? Do you think that it's malicious that the landlord did that? Or do you think the landlord was in the right? Or do you believe the tenant is in the right and that they're just poor victims? Let me know in the comments section down below.